Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Speedrunners and Coffee, the show where we find out about all your favorite speedrunners. Today, my guest runs Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, a game I still haven't played, as well as Signs of the Sojourner. It's the King's Pride. How are you doing today, Pride?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me on.
No problems. So, what got you into speedrunning?
So it's actually a very funny, long progression right into an immediate, falling off a cliff directly into it. I've liked video games since I was like a little kid. Some of my first memories are playing Banjo-Kazooie with my mom. So I've always been, kind of in that, that vibe. And then whenever the first time that the idea of speedrunning even came to me was when I was playing Star Fox Adventures as a kid. And it was like my second or third playthrough. And I was maybe like a halfway or a 3/4 through the game. And I saw my playtime and I was like, I've been playing for like 3 hours and I'm really far into this game. How quick could I do it? And then that thought never crossed my mind again. And then I remember one time I was playing, it was Ocarina of Time 3D on the 3DS, and I was like, I could probably beat this game in 3 hours. I really know Ocarina of Time, which is, if you ever look at how Ocarina of Time speedruns were in 2015 or something, that is a very funny idea to be like, yeah, I could just, cold, no practice, no nothing, do sub 3 in Ocarina. And then in high school, I discovered GDQ just randomly on their Twitch page. I was just scrolling through and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. I think it was like a Guacamelee speedrun that I saw first or something. But that's where I first got actually introduced to the idea of, oh, people play games fast and in an actually practiced manner. That's really cool. So I watched that a lot, and I love GDQ. It is what I discovered that I can sleep best too, because it's you've got that whole thing of, I have ADD, so it's trying to get my mind to be quiet while I'm trying to go to sleep is a lot. So I've got to be kind of engaged in something, but not so interested and engaged that it keeps me awake. So it's that perfect middle ground of somebody's explaining their speed run, they're going through talking about something they're passionate about, and I can just kind of fall asleep and pick up where I remember they were talking about. And then I watched that for a long time. I started to get into a couple of speedrunners streams. I watched Distortion 2, who runs Dark Souls and all of that kind of thing. I watched a lot of Gymnast and a lot of Zelda stuff because Zelda is one of my great loves. I do play a technically Zelda game. And then last year, I went to GDQ for the first time, and being surrounded by people who run games and have their own thing to talk about, and being well, I don't actually run anything. I think that at the time I was starting to attempt to learn Age of Calamity, but I had barely gotten through the first mission. There was no motivation for me there. And then being surrounded by people who were so passionate about it, and meeting people and becoming friends with people who were passionate about speedrunning and getting better and all of that really just pushed me into it. So then I started genuinely giving it an effort, getting really into it, discovering that I loved actually doing it and not just watching it. And that's kind of just how I fell directly into speedrunning in the last year.
Nice. So, what made you pick Age of Calamity? Because you had mentioned Star Fox Adventure, and you kind of being I'm beating this really fast, or you mentioned OOT 3D. Why Age of Calamity?
Yeah, so Age of Calamity, it was really weird because I really love that game. I like Warriors games in general. I think that the gameplay loop is very satisfying. I really liked Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition when I played it, but there was it always felt like there was something missing. And then I played Age of Calamity, and it's every single character has these unique mechanics, and the gameplay is so tight and it's so fun. And there's a huge focus on enemy interaction and how you approach combat scenarios. It's a lot less base management like a lot of other warrior games can be, where it's protect your stronghold, go capture this stronghold. It's hey, go here and beat this dude up. And it's just so fun. And I played the game, I 100%ed the game, and I still wanted to play more of it. And I didn't want to just like start over. So then I looked up the speedrun of it, the New Game Plus speedrun specifically, because I had just 100% completed the game. And I was like, I want to play as not just the characters that you kind of get at the beginning of the game, but like different characters. And especially if anybody has not played that game yet, the first DLC added in Zelda, but she's riding on a motorcycle, which is the greatest character that's ever been added to any video game ever. And I was like, I want to play as Bike Zelda. And you can only really do that in New Game Plus because you have to unlock it throughout like post game content. So that's what really convinced me to start playing that game. And that's just like what I've been focusing on for the past while now.
Nice. Now, do you have any interest in going into a Star Fox Adventure or an OOT 3D or anything like do you have interest in going into those games because you had thought about those before really getting into speedruns?
Well, so it's actually really funny because Star Fox Adventure was one of those games that I also considered just because like I think that it's very underrated. A lot of people look at it and go, well, that's the worst Star Fox game. And I look at it and go, it's an okay Zelda game, actually. Like, it's not a Star Fox game. It's basically a Zelda title, and it's pretty good. Zelda with furries, what more could anybody ever want? But I actually started following a content creator who streams the game. I believe it's JubJub82 is his Twitch handle. But I was like, man, he's like discovering all this stuff. There's like air swimming, which in any game that you can get air swimming is always hilarious and awesome. And then I started looking at it, but the problem is that right now I play this game where my PB is, just under 2 hours and 45 minutes. And it's a lot. Like it's a big time dedication every time that I start. So it's like I'm right now, if I'm going to be transitioning to a different speed game, I'm looking to kind of drop that time investment, maybe something that's like an hour long, so that I'm not, putting out large chunks of time to practice and do these runs. But Ocarina of Time 3D is one that I think would be very fun, but for that you need like specialized hardware for a 3DS that can stream to a monitor and all of that kind of thing. So that's one that I think that I have aspirations to it eventually, but not at the moment.
That's fair because it's also quite expensive to get that hardware.
Yeah, it is.
Have you thought about OOT original at all?
I've thought about it every now and again. Like Ocarina of Time is one of those games that like, I mentioned earlier Banjo-Kazooie. I grew up on the N64. That was like my childhood console. So I have a great love in my heart for it. I love doing randomizers of it. I think that that game has kind of evolved right now to the point of there's a lot of tricks that it's like a lot of tricks that assume that you know a lot of tricks. And it's like, it's kind of its own like tiramisu of learning stuff. So I think that it would be fun to like try as like a casual speed run. You just enjoy it, play it a little bit, but I don't think that I have any like, leaderboard ambitions for that at the moment kind of deal.
Okay, that's fair. I know an OOT runner who's pretty high up in Australia, and he was like, "I'll teach it to you," and I was like, "Okay." And they play on Wii VC now. It's not N64 or anything like that. And I'm like, well, that means I have to hack a Wii, and also I need to have the Japanese copy and put it in. And I
it's a lot of
understood WADs.
It's always when there's a lot of hoops to jump through, that's kind of what steers me more away from speed games, because like my next like games that I'm like kind of looking at when I mention I'm looking to get like some shorter games, both of them are dog games, which is very funny. I'm looking at like Okami or Twilight Princess, and that's good because like those are much less version dependent, and especially like less dependent on versions that are more difficult to get.
And also, I mean, with Twilight Princess, you're basically GameCube or Wii U HD. It's a shame that they're both rather expensive. I think I was seeing them for about $150 Canadian, and I'm just like,
yeah, absolutely.
Man. It's just like, man, I really don't want that. At least with Okami, it's pretty much out.
It's
on
easy
anything.
to get because you can get it on Switch, which I think is the preferred like mode right now because it has like you can do a hybrid of like sort of like the Wii's motion controls for the brush and then the regular controls for everything else.
And you can get it on PS4 and the Wii,
Yeah,
the
and
PS2.
PC.
It's
Yeah.
like on everything. It's not just locked away to two consoles. Cough, cough, Nintendo. Put Twilight Princess on the Switch. Cough,
Yes.
cough.
Yep.
And you recently did your first event not too long ago, but do you have any like rituals or anything like that yet for events?
Yeah, I don't think that I've had the time to like figure out rituals or anything like that. It's the first speedrun event that I did was a while ago. I was at Multithon doing a race with Pippi in a top hat, playing the other speed game that I play, which is Signs of the Sojourner, which I got roped into by Pippi because she needed somebody to practice with. But I'm not like unfamiliar to performance, I guess. I was a vocalist in high school and college. I did some like, some band stuff in like middle school and that kind of thing. So like beforehand, it's mostly a mental thing for me where I'm like, calm down. It's not a huge deal kind of thing, even if it might be. Basically my ritual is trying not to get in my own head about things, trying to distract myself. I don't have like a cut and planned ritual because usually I don't plan ahead because things don't feel real until the moment that I'm there.
Okay, that's fair. Now, you've mentioned games from your childhood. So, is there a game that you love, but you could never run it because you love it so much?
Oh, there's a few. Like there's definitely those kinds of games where like you want to preserve like how you played it as a kid, where it's like speed running kind of opens your eyes to things where it's like I can't play this in the same way ever again because I can speed run it now. But I think that the one game that I love to death, it is one of my favorite games of all time, but I would never speedrun, is Metal Gear Solid 5. Simply for the fact that the only category that isn't like a million years long is one where you stop midway through the game. And that just feels terrible to me. It's like, it would be like, all right, I'm done. Dropping out, calling it quits.
Interesting that there's a category that you just stop midway through.
Yeah, because Metal Gear Solid 5 is like broken up into a bunch of different acts, and so the act that they stop at, it's chapter 1. It's like 2 hours is generally where it kind of sits, but it's like you kill the big stompy robot thing and you did it, you won. Awesome. Game's not over, but we're done now.
Interesting. I mean, as you started explaining that, I'm like, wait a minute, 100%'s a thing in Skyward Sword. Oh, right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, this makes more sense now. As you started, and I was like, oh, right, 100%. Oops.
Yes. So it's like I love Metal Gear Solid 5. It's such an amazing like story and it's an achievement of game design and storytelling and I would never speedrun it.
That's fair. I've never played MGS5. Played 4, which is kind of a movie, but I never
Yeah,
played 5.
MGS5 is a little less of a movie, but simply because like most of the story is delivered via like audio tapes that you have to go into your menu and listen to. But like half the time you're driving around Afghanistan anyway, so you might as well listen to the audio tapes.
Okay, that's fair. Now, are you playing any games casually like right now? Like what is your current like catalog of games that you're playing at the
Yeah,
moment?
so right now, my most recent playthrough, I've been doing Blasphemous recently, which is it's a 2D Metroidvania pixel art game. It's very cool. It is basically like Catholicism condensed into a little game minus the Jesus parts. So it's like it's dripping with atmosphere and aesthetic. I've been playing that recently, and also in a Discord server that I'm a part of, we've been doing a lot of Archipelago, which is a multi-world randomizer with a bunch of different games. So I've been playing Dark Souls 3 on that recently. I did a couple of Dark Souls 3 randomizers, which I had never done before, and it's pretty fun. There's some settings that I'd like to mess around with that. Like the first one was pretty like standard, like everything's basically vanilla except for the items are shuffled. And then the second one, I went a little crazier with it. And this next time that I do it, I want to make it so it's like all of the weapons that you find auto equip, so you have to use what you find. So
That
that's
sounds
kind of
dangerous.
yeah. It's that's kind of been on my my docket recently as far as video games go.
Now, is there a skip you wished was in a game that you run?
Oh man. The I think that the biggest skip that I think I would wish for would actually be in Signs of the Sojourner. There is a pretty hard lot in one of the categories, Caravaneer Percent, where you have to succeed in a conversation with a specific character named Gull. And Gull is kind of an asshole and really does not
Yes.
want to let you succeed in conversation with her. So if we were able to just find a way that either you can 100% reliably get through Gull or you just did not have to succeed there, that would be very nice. I think that if we're talking in terms of Age of Calamity, any way to get NPCs to move faster, like if even if it was the bootlegged like pushing them forward with your own character model, that would cut down a ton of time in some very key levels that are a little boring because you just kind of have to wait for Zelda to walk through a forest for a while. So I think that would probably be my top two on the wish list there.
Ah, why is she walking through a forest? Why isn't she running through a forest?
It's I mean she's supposed to be running, but like oh she's been praying all day, man. She's been sitting it like in knee deep water. She's so ding dang tired. She's got to take a break midway through so you can kill some enemies. She's gotta have a little snack in a jukebox. She's got to pop a quarter and listen to some old 45s. So if we could get her to pick up the pace a little bit in that mission, that would be wonderful.
It's like Zelda, we're in the middle of a war. We don't have time to hit the jukebox. Somebody find the fawns. The jukebox not working.
Just somebody hit it.
Hey.
Hey. It's pretty interesting because like there are skips in Age of Calamity and it's so tantalizingly irritating because I found one on accident where you can basically shuffle around some like text boxes that happen which trigger events by doing certain things. And there's two places in the game that is used, but I have not found any more because it relies on basically going to where those text boxes happen and just doing whatever you can at the moment, which is like 10 different things for each text box. It's tedious. So if I could magically stumble upon more of those, that would be wonderful.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds a bit of a pain. Given that this is a show called Speedrunners and Coffee, what is your favorite coffee?
Yeah, I'm not actually super picky when it comes to coffee. I like anything that's like sweet. I'm not a huge fan of bitter flavors. So like anytime that I get a black coffee, because I'm like, feeling like a tough guy or I'm like in a rush, I'm like, just give me a black coffee. I take a sip and I go, I have made a huge mistake today.
Oh no, a
It's
grave mistake has been made.
yeah, it's always like I'm not a connoisseur as one might say. I'm a big fan of being casually into something. I think that there's nothing wrong with being a casual. So it's like you could give me some kind of like fancy dark Colombian roast and I would be like, this is good coffee. Then you could give me like McDonald's coffee with a bunch of sugar and creamer tossed in. I'd be like, this is good coffee. So like I go for flavors more than any kind of like type,
Yeah. Then may I introduce you to Coke coffees? It's Coke and coffee together.
Okay, Coke and coffee. I assume you mean Coca-Cola and not cocaine. I don't think that I'm in that much need of a boost in my speedrunning, but I have never heard of putting Coke in coffee. I had a little bit of a visceral reaction to hearing that until I thought about it. And I was like, it's just carbonated water and sugar, and that can be nice in coffee, I guess.
Yes,
I'll have to try it out.
Because Coke does sell Coke coffees, and
They
they have three flavors. Well, technically, I think six, but three flavors: dark roast, vanilla, and caramel. Caramel does not exist in Canada, as far as I know. And then in the States, they also have zero variants of that. So Coke coffee zeros.
That is interesting. I might need to track some of these down and give them a shot.
Yes, it's an absolutely delightful beverage. I recommend the dark roast the most because the vanilla kind of just tastes like a vanilla Coke, kind of.
Yeah, which is fine-ish to begin with.
Yeah. The only difference is that, these cans are about $4 a piece
Ooh,
Canadian.
yeah.
So it's like I could spend $4 on a vanilla Coke, or I could go and buy a can
Yeah,
$1.50.
I mix small batch Coke coffee.
So that's a thing.
Interesting.
Yes, it was Zoku Bun, who is not a speedrunner, but she does a lot of back end and hosting and whatnot. She introduced me to these, and I've absolutely loved them. Wish they weren't $4 a can, though supposedly Walmart sells them for $2.50.
Ah.
Yes. Just a matter of getting to a Walmart.
Yeah, I can imagine that might be difficult if you live not in the American South.
Yes, or, live in a very large city. Although
Yes.
supposedly there is one a 3-kilometer walk from me, but I don't
Ah,
know.
time to make a pilgrimage, I guess.
I guess. So yeah, that's my recommendation if you're like, this tastes good based on no fanciness at all, just whatever fits your
Okay.
mood. I recommend
Yeah.
those.
Yeah, I'll try it out.
Yeah, and let me know what you think, because I keep talking about these things every episode.
Not sponsored. Hashtag not sponsored.
Indeed, hashtag not sponsored. Coke, if you want to get in contact with me and offer me a sponsorship, I'll totally do it. Getting back to the speedrunning portion of the show,
Yeah.
how do you prefer to learn a speedrun? Do you take notes, do practice, or are you one to just dive right into full runs?
So the way that I have learned speedruns historically is that I break it up into digestible chunks. So like that's really easy with Age of Calamity because it's a mission-based game. So I learned a mission at a time, and there weren't a ton of resources for that game. And by not a ton of resources, I mean literally zero resources for that game. By the time that I'd entered into actually speedrunning, the community was pretty dead already. People had just moved on to other games. So I was basically just watching the world record video and copying what the guy was doing and doing that one mission at a time until I was satisfied with my ability to do it without watching the video, and then I would move on to the next one. So that's kind of how I learned that. With signs, it's a little different, simply because I had somebody actually there to teach me. Whenever Pippi, aforementioned Pippi in a top hat, was practicing for her appearance on GDQ Hotfix, she was teaching me how to do care of near percent. And so she was like giving me basically a guided tour of it with a Google Doc to help me along. And then when I learned any percent of signs, it's like a 12-minute run. So I just did the whole thing with a little route doc next to me of, do we fail this conversation? No. Do we fail this conversation? No. Do we fail this? Yes. Do we fail this? All the rest we will fail. Yes. So thankfully that was a little easier and I could just focus on getting basically mouse movement down and then moving on from there. So that's kind of like, I take a bit of a hybridized approach for different runs.
That is fair. Do you have any advice that you would have given to your past self, knowing what you know now with speedruns? I realize that it's been a very short time since you've began.
Yeah.
Is there anything, any wisdom that you've gained since then that you would have given yourself back then?
I think that I would have told myself back then, practice more divine beasts, because maybe I might be less bad at them now. Probably not, though. I would probably tell myself, stick with it even when it starts getting tough, because there's always a crest that people reach when they're learning a run and getting good at it. And then once you can crest over that, where you are a little more natural with it, it a little better, then it gets easier. So that's probably what I would tell myself.
Very nice. Now, if you could create a game from an entirely different genre and add it to your favorite series, what genre of game would you add?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think that there's a lot. I would love to see a proper like Souls-like game in the Zelda series, like really gritty, really exploring like some of the themes that some Zelda games have gone into, like Majora's Mask Mask and Breath of the Wild, like that feeling of loss and loneliness and, having to push forward with nothing but maybe the promise of a happy ending. And, having a properly difficult Zelda game for once would be pretty cool as well. There's also, like, if we're just talking franchises, like, I'm a huge Warhammer fan, and they've got like their own games. And first of all, I wish that they would make good games, but I also wish that like there would be, I've mentioned that I really like Metal Gear, so like a game where you are like exploring the Warhammer universe in that Metal Gear style of like espionage and listening in and learning from context clues and all of that. I think that would be extremely cool.
Okay. Do you have an opinion on IGT versus RTA?
Yeah, I think that RTA is usually my preferred method. IGT has, like, they have their ups and downs for both of them. And there's definitely strategies that happen for both of them that can arise and be, I don't want to use the word problematic, but less optimal. Like, first of all, IGT, it's great when it works. Hyrule Warriors, for instance, only counts in IGT when you have direct control of your character, which a lot of games do. So like if you're doing special attacks or weak point smashes or anything where you cannot control your character, it pauses the timer. So like I feel like a run where you're running off of IGT and you're just spamming those attacks feels a lot less engaging and a lot less cool than one where you're like actually using a character's moveset to its fullest and attacking situations in different ways versus just hit the A button, hit the X button, repeat. I think that RTA does have some funkiness to it as well, but usually the funk is lessened there, I feel.
Okay. Do you have any influences in the speedrun world?
So I kind of mentioned earlier that like I was a fan of Distortion 2 and Gymnast. They were like the runners, like the solo runners that I was more, watching at the time. It's kind of strange because I've talked to some of my speedrunning friends about this where they say that like you can almost always tell what got somebody into speedrunning by like watching how they approach speedruns. And I feel like the odd duck out there because like what got me into speedruns was GDQ in the first place. And I watched a ton of different people, playing their runs, interacting with them in different ways and explaining them as they went. So I feel like my sort of influences there are more varied and like a mishmash of many, many, many different members of the community that like I might not have followed closely, but still affected me in a way that I did not realize. Like I don't have, the hyper focus of Gymnast where I can just be a machine and keep pounding away at something. But I also, don't try to follow the dogmas of any one given creator or group of creators in the space. I think that my influences are just like the idea of speedrunning, like what I thought about it as, a younger kid, and it's more like a my own kind of deal to me, I guess, if that makes sense.
Okay, interesting. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, speedrun wise?
In 5 years, I hope that I can, improve my, Age of Calamity is kind of like my speed home, I guess. It's where I started. So I want to improve that run a lot. I want to actually like open it up, make a couple more tricks for it so it's not so extremely just execution based, but like there's visual interest in the game. There's like more things of like, oh, we've manipulated this so that this happens. I want to learn some more runs. Like I said, I want to learn both Twilight Princess and Okami at some point. I want to get better with the runs that I already have. And I want to, have more, I guess, connections in the community. I want to make more friends and talk to more people and, have more buddies that also like to do games fast.
That is very fair. How do you not burn yourself out of speedrunning?
Uh, it's pretty funny because I have to be very careful about not burning out. I've mentioned a little earlier, I do have ADD, so like I tend to hyper focus on things very much when I'm super interested in them. And the moment that the hyper focus fades, I get extremely fatigued from that thing. So like I think regular breaks are important. Taking some time away from speedrunning to pursue some other interests, if it's like, doing some writing or some art or something like that, focus on, for me, it's focusing on something else for a little while so that I can come back to speedrunning and be like, I've missed this and not, this shit again. That's kind of how I tend to avoid burnout.
Okay, that is very fair and understandable. Do you have any proud, like super proud moments when it comes like as a runner?
Yeah, I think that my first actual run, I was so proud because it's like I proved to myself that I could actually do it. I think that breaking 3 hours in Age of Calamity for the first time, and also breaking 2 hours 45 minutes, hitting those milestones is like a look how far I've come. I have not been doing this for very long, and I'm still making these leaps and bounds in progress. Being invited onto Multithon and learning a game super quick and still like kind of holding my own in this race for a while. That was a very proud moment for me. And I think that I'm just looking forward to having more of those moments,
Nice. And do you have it like, are there any moments where they've been really low for you?
I think that the probably the lowest that I have been is when I hit a slump around the 2 hour 53 minute mark. Whenever I was playing Age of Calamity, I could not get my time faster. That was around the first time that I submitted to GDQ, so I was very nervous. I was like trying to push myself too hard. My Switch kept on overheating, which was in retrospect very funny, but at the time not very funny because it's like I can't afford to fix my Switch right now. But if I can't like get through a run in the first place, that was all very disheartening. But thankfully, like being able to push through that and breaking 250 and then 245 later, the hills do not feel as good without the valleys to give them context. So even though there are some lower moments, I think that I'm still grateful for those moments as well.
Very nice. Well, I must say, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I really do super appreciate it. And if people want to find you, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't do social media a lot. I have a empty Twitter page at the King's Pride. I have a Twitch page that I stream at a little less regularly since my work got a bit more busy, but I'm looking to pick that up again at the King's Pride on Twitch. I have a YouTube page full of private videos for all of my PB videos. And people can always just like, pop into Discord. I usually hang out in Pippi and a Top Hat's Discord, pretty active in there. So those are the places that they can find me. And thank you so much for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you again. And we will see you all next Saturday. Thank you all so much. Bye bye.